In the last video, we took a look at the Snowden leaks, which demonstrated that major internet companies share user data with national law enforcement and intelligence agencies. But that raises the question, what about smaller companies? Is it safe to store our data with them? Is it safe to use them for communication services like email without worrying about surveillance? Well, let's go ahead and look back and remember what happened to Lavabit. Back in July 2013, when Edward Snowden was stuck in the Moscow airport looking for asylum from South American countries, he used the email address edsnowden@lavabit.com to arrange a press conference. His email, with that email address, was hosted by a small privacy-focused company called Lavabit. The service that Lavabit provided was secure email. Incoming email was automatically encrypted when it was received with the end user's private key. That would be Snowden's private key in this case. And incoming email wasn't logged before encryption. That's what the website said, and that's what the users were paying for. And so the idea was that Lavabit employees couldn't access the email, and even if they got a request from law enforcement to provide the email, they didn't have unencrypted copies, so they couldn't help. Now, in August 2013, the next month, Lavabit suspended its operations and ceased to provide email service. They wouldn't reopen providing any sort of communication service until 4 years later in 2017. The owner of Lavabit, Lothar Levinson, said he couldn't explain why he had shut down the service due to a legal gag order. Later, we found out what happened. Levinson had received a national security letter from the FBI demanding that he cooperate with an investigation, most likely about Snowden. National security letters are administrative subpoenas that the FBI can issue. This is a rule from the Patriot Act. They can issue these orders without a warrant or without any judicial oversight at all in relation to national security cases. As shown in this case, these national security letters can also come with gag orders that prohibit the recipient from talking about them at all. Levinson complained that he couldn't even tell his lawyer everything about this case. Levinson was apparently willing to help out and provide information about the specific customer named in the order. Now, that kind of makes sense. If the order was about Snowden, he was going to be prepared for a national security order against the provider. But that's not what the FBI was demanding here. They got a court order demanding that Lavabit provide their private TLS keys and give those keys to the FBI, which would have allowed them to capture all the email traffic for all 400,000 Lavabit users. Those TLS keys would be used for incoming email by SMTP, so the FBI could have another box nearby on the network that was capturing all of that email traffic, and probably the FBI was also demanding SSL keys for the Lavabit website, which would have allowed, I don't know if Lavabit was providing webmail at the time, they probably were, that would have allowed the FBI to snoop the web traffic as well, although what they really wanted was that feed of incoming emails by SMTP. Now, since the whole point of Lavabit was not allowing user emails to be intercepted, Levinson shut down the service. Lavabit relaunched in 2017 with a new end-to-end encrypted mail protocol. I haven't really looked at whether the service is any good or whether the protocol is any good, but there's no way to make it both secure and compatible with standard email, so I don't necessarily recommend this as an email service, but they're backup and they're doing something. So what can we conclude here? The original Lavabit service was based on trust. Lothar Levinson and any other Lavabit employees had the power to intercept emails at any time, but they promised not to. And it turned out that that promise was impossible to keep while still running the service, because the FBI could show up at any time with a national security letter, and eventually they did. A less principled business owner, or the owner of a business that wasn't so completely based on a security promise, probably wouldn't have shut down the business. They simply would have complied with the order and not talked about it. So where does that leave us if we want privacy, and even privacy from national level actors like the FBI? Well, big internet companies provide direct access to user data for law enforcement and intelligence agencies. So we can't go with Google for email. And it turns out that small internet companies like Lavabit can be legally ordered to do the same thing at any time, and they won't even be able to talk about it. So that leaves us stuck with the situation that any data sent to a service provider at all is interceptable. And keep in mind that most proprietary software has a universal backdoor, so even if the service that you're using supposedly has end-to-end encryption or something, they could send you a personalized patch to remove that feature or disable that feature at any time. Further, keep in mind that metadata is no less valuable than data. So even if the communications are end-to-end encrypted and the end-to-end encryption isn't broken, any sort of metadata associated with that communication is still available to the service provider, even if it's just source, destination, and time. Source, destination, and time. That's enough to provide significant surveillance information for anyone who's paying attention to it. So that's where we are. Between the PRISM program and Lavabit, it's difficult to trust any third-party communication provider to provide secure communication services. It's just not legal for them to do that. The Lavabit case is specific to the United States and the rules there, but the problem isn't specific to the United States. A very similar situation happened recently in Switzerland with Proton Mail, where they had previously promised that they didn't log IP addresses, but as soon as they got a court order requesting assistance in a law enforcement investigation, they had to turn on IP address logging so they could provide an IP address to, I believe, the French police in order to identify an activist. So no email provider anywhere is completely safe from the local government. That's just how governments work. Now, this isn't even specific to email. We haven't heard cases where VPN providers have been ordered to turn on the logs and then turn those logs over to governments, but there's no reason why VPN providers are not subject to those rules. And any VPN provider that says that they don't keep logs and haven't gotten any requests from the government, either it just hasn't happened to them yet, or they are lying. Those are the possibilities. Thank you for watching this video. Go ahead and click the links in the description to get to my blog where you can subscribe to the RSS feed so you don't miss anything that I post. And you can get to the blog post about this particular video, which will include some links to sources and stuff. Have a wonderful rest of your day.